Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing your ex's social media rules to follow. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing your ex's social media rules to follow. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will likely wonder how to navigate your ex's social media. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 rules to follow regarding your ex's social media and how to proceed. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is when they post. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, it can be very confusing about what to do if and when you see that your ex has posted on social media. Maybe it's a status, maybe it's a photo, perhaps they have posted a story. What do you do? And how best to proceed? Well, my personal opinion is, by and large, generally speaking, you should not be looking, viewing, or commenting on anything that your ex-dumper posts. Now let's break this down a little bit to fully understand what I mean. Now let's consider first of all that they've posted some type of text status, maybe even a photo, maybe an image. What do you do during this time? Well, you might be tempted to comment. You might think, well, they've posted a photo of themselves. They look great. Maybe if I type something underneath in the comments saying how great I think they look, that will put me in their good books. Well, unfortunately, this would be you breaking my version of a no contact rule. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, no contact is something that lots of people suggest you implement if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back. However, there are many different versions of a no contact rule that you can find online, and I believe that my version will give you that best possible chance of success. So I suggest that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, ring the bell for notifications, and check out the playlist entitled The No Contact Rule, so you can fully immerse yourself in my version of a rule and understand why I believe it will give you that best possible chance of success. So if we consider my version of a rule, when we look at social media, when we look at you typing in the comments, that is you breaking no contact. And that is not going to increase your chance of getting your ex back. Most of the time, generally speaking, and of course I have to be general within these podcasts, this isn't me and you speaking one-on-one in my audio coaching service where we can really dive deep into your specifics. But generally speaking, we have to consider if your ex posts something, whether it is a status, whether it is a photo, and you decide to comment underneath, even if you're giving a compliment, that is in essence you breaking no contact. That's no different to you sending them a text, giving them a call, or waiting outside where they work, trying to grab a word. It's the same thing. You're breaking no contact. And most of the time, dumpies, you should never be contacting your ex again unless they contact you first. So it doesn't matter how great they look in the photo. It doesn't matter what they type within a status. You shouldn't be commenting. Now, of course, you have to use your common sense. If they type something or show something which you believe to be genuinely worrying, something that you're really worried about that they're posting and you think, that's not quite right, well, you need to use your common sense. But I wouldn't suggest that you typing underneath would help that in any case. I would suggest if you see something that you're worried about, let someone else know, whether it is a friend, family member, even the authorities. If you're worried about something you see, yes, of course, let someone know. But I wouldn't have thought that you typing anything would really help that matter either. But thankfully, luckily, this is not likely to be the case. More likely is they're going to type or post a photo which has nothing that you should be worried about other than the fact that you might be nervous that they're quote-unquote moving on. And therefore, you would have this desire to type something to try and regain your territory within this situation. But it is not likely to help you. Now, what happens if your ex-bedumper posts a story, well, these can be even more intriguing to view, but please be careful, because as I'm sure you would know, if you view a story, they will know that you've seen it. And we can also connect this to, once again, you breaking the no contact rule. Okay, you haven't typed anything, but you've gone out of your way to view their story. In my opinion, that is you breaking no contact. That means you're resetting the clock on potentially one day reattracting them, because their romantic emotional attraction needs to grow in line with them feeling that you are never coming back towards them. If they think that you are going to view their story or actually reach out to them, because for me it's one and the same, then they're not going to feel that longing for you. They're not going to be able to miss you because you are always within touching distance. Now, some of you might be listening and thinking, well, I know of a secret way that I can view my ex's story and they will never know. I can view their story and they will have no idea that I ever did this. I can use this special technique. Well, listen, you might be able to do this in a way that they don't know you're viewing, but you will know. And what I mean by this is we're trying to protect your mental health here. If you view their story and you do it in a secret way where they don't know that you have viewed it, okay, you haven't broken no contact in their eyes, they don't know you viewed it, but you've seen it. You've taken on board whatever it is you've seen, and it will likely set you back. You can become addicted to this. This is not going to help you. At best, viewing your ex's social media, whether it is a post or a story, at best, this is going to confuse you, and at worst, it is going to break your heart again. I strongly suggest you do not view your ex's social media. Whether or not they know you're looking is irrespective. This is to protect you as much as it is to try and make sure that they don't feel that you are viewing, looking and commenting, etc. It's not just about them not recognizing that you're doing this. It's also about you protecting your mental health and not suffering through the confusion of what they're posting. Ultimately, what you see on social media is not necessarily or even really likely to be completely true or authentic. I'm not saying that your ex is deliberately trying to deceive you or anybody else, but we will naturally post things we want other people to see, and it is not genuinely going to be precisely how things are. So don't get wrapped up in the concept of social media, because in essence, it's not really reality. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is when something major happens. So now we're speaking about a major life event in your ex's world. This could be a birthday, that's probably the most likely possibility, but it could also be an achievement or maybe something sad. Maybe they're announcing something which is connected to their family or some type of announcement that you view as really sad. But hopefully we're speaking more upbeat here, and it would be their birthday or they have achieved something. What do you do when something major happens and you see it posted on their social media? Well, I believe this connects to point number 1 most of the time. Not always, but most. And that is that you don't comment. Ideally, you don't view anything either. If you do see something, when you realize they have achieved something that they always wanted to achieve, maybe you read something which is very sad, unfortunately, connected to what's going on in their life, maybe regarding somebody that you know, perhaps connected to your ex. Or maybe you just know it's their birthday and you see everybody posting happy birthday on their timeline. What do you do here? Well, I don't believe you should be doing anything unless you've had a positive interaction with your ex in the last few weeks, which was instigated by them. Now, that is a lot to take on, so please just bear that in mind. Let's go through this once more. Have you had a positive interaction started by your ex in the last few weeks? If the answer is yes, then you do have scope to perhaps contact your ex in some regard. If the answer is no, you've not had any interaction, maybe you had a somewhat positive interaction, but it was because you broke no contact and they just responded with a smiley face. Okay, that doesn't count. You shouldn't be breaking no contact anyway. And if they didn't really give you anything other than a pleasant response, that doesn't count. Okay, we're looking at a situation where your ex has reached out to you a few weeks ago. You have replied, nice conversation. You haven't got back together yet, but it was pleasant. If their birthday then rolls around a few weeks later, yes, you do have scope to say happy birthday, but I would be very careful on actually doing it on social media. If you actually fall within this small bracket of people where you do have the scope to do so, I would do it in a more personal way. I would do it via direct message. Now, maybe this is still connected to your socials. That's fine. Whether it's a text, whether it's connected to a social media app you're considering here, that is fine. But I would do it one-on-one through a direct message. I wouldn't just post it on their socials, post it on their wall, post it in their comments. I wouldn't do that. And the same goes for an achievement. If they've achieved something that you knew they've always been working towards, but yet you haven't had a positive interaction started by them in the last few weeks, then you have to consider, sadly, they dumped you and they do not get gold membership of your thanks and congratulations to their achievement, not unless they have actually started an interaction very recently in a positive way. If they have, then again, I would suggest that perhaps you probably should be best sending something direct. However, if it's an achievement, if you've had this positive interaction recently and they post how they've done this amazing achievement, then maybe you could, within the comments, just put congrats, or maybe just give it an emoji or whatever. I would be cautious on all of this though, because why should other people see you are connecting with your ex again in some regard? Other people, sadly, muck things up, they mess things up, they cause problems. Maybe mutual friends see you posted something and they say to your ex, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? And they scare your ex away before they naturally have the chance to see where this might go. Okay? So I'm very, very cautious of showing the world that you two are now interacting. I would keep it on a one-on-one messaging style. But remember, please, only if your ex reached out to you in a positive way very recently. If they haven't, then you shouldn't be posting anything at all. Now, if they post something really sad, okay, and maybe it's something connected to a family member, somebody who you knew, and you're thinking, gosh, that came out of nowhere, I didn't expect that, that's really, really sad. What do you do in that regard? Well, you need to use your common sense. You need to consider whether or not you should be commenting or posting anything at all. My suggestion here, maybe do a sad reaction. Maybe you don't post a comment, but you give it a sad reaction just to show the acknowledgement. If your ex knows that you are obviously both connected on social media still, and they post something really sad, something that you feel you should be reacting to, a quick reaction in this regard is completely understandable. And this is why we have to realise the specifics of social media behaviour do depend on the unique circumstances. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and my final point of today's podcast about your ex's social media, rules to follow. And point number 3 is following and friends. So depending on the type of social media that you use with your ex will depend on whether you are known as a follower or a friend. It will depend on what you can actually do within this. But what I would say is you need to put your mental health first. What this means is that if you are suffering from being connected to your ex on social media, you seriously need to consider removing that connection. Now, perhaps you're using a social where you can just turn off notifications but still stay connected. That is probably the ideal position, because if you're doing that, that means anything you post, your ex will see, but anything they post, you won't see. And that is the ideal place to be. If you can't do that and you are suffering, then you may need to completely remove a connection, maybe even blocking your ex. Now, this is a last resort, because if you remove a social media connection, you remove an avenue for them to possibly reach out to you. If you want to try to get your ex back, you need to leave as many avenues open as possible for your ex-badumper to one day possibly reach out to you. If you close the door by blocking them on social media, obviously you're closing one of those avenues off. So you have to really consider, is this right for you? Now you need to balance your own mental health with trying to get your ex back, but your mental health should always be your guiding light. Even if you want to get your ex back, if you are struggling, if you are suffering, if you can't cope with seeing what your ex posts online, and if you can't turn off notifications, or you can't stop yourself from having a little look, then you probably need to remove them from your social media, at least removing the notifications. If you can't do that, deleting them, removing them as a friend or a follower, but possibly you may even need to block them. If you do this and you're worried that you won't be able to get your ex back because you've made and taken such a step, just recognize that there is likely other ways they could reach out to you. They probably know your phone number. Maybe there is another social media that they could contact you on. So try not to be too worried. In an ideal world, we're not going to block off these pathways for them to reach out to you. But if you need to, then you should, because your mental health comes first. And therefore, when we consider following or friendship with your ex on social media, you should only be doing it, and you should only be allowing this to continue if you can cope. If you can deal with it, then fine. If you're struggling, then you need to help yourself out and stop following and stop being friends. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.